Okay, greetings everyone. Don Slichty here, and I'd like to share a 90-minute seminar with you that I recently did live in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, which is where I live. And I thought it was a pretty big success, and so I'm going to replicate it here so it can have a wider viewing for those who are concerned about rescuing our republic. So let's get going. It might be 90 minutes, might be 75, depends how impassioned I get, but let's get going. First of all, I just want to say that my experience with what I call the Republic for the United States of America, it's actually a national movement, and it has state affiliations, if you will, or state manifestations, and then county. And we're going to talk about that as we go. But we're going to be talking about rescuing the Republic. What will it take? And I'm taking a lot of my information from this group, the Republic for the United States of America. But I want you to know that up until about 2 years ago, I didn't know anything about this at all. I hadn't been taught this, hadn't heard about it. And I find that that's probably true of 95+% of the American population. Okay. So I doubt if many of you have heard about it. Now, my personal awakening began in a large way around 2015 about shenanigans on leadership levels of the spheres of influence in our life, the major spheres of influence or mountains in our life. And so that awakening began then. But it's concerning the republic and how to restore or recover, reclaim our republic. That only started for me a couple of years ago in a serious way, and I want to share what I have learned. Okay, I think it'll be helpful to you. So let me quick give you my bio for those of you who don't know me, Don Slichty. Uh, I was a pastor for 33 years, 25 years here in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. My wife and I have been married 49 years. We had 6 children. We have 11 grandchildren. Okay, joy of our life, right? And but I served as a pastor. I had several small businesses on the side. I was a small business entrepreneur. And I was also on the local school board for 16 years, the longest running tenure of any person in Rio Rancho's 20 some year history or 30 some year history as a school district. Anyway, um, so that's my quick bio. And I also want to mention up front here that I'm going to use the word 7 mountains during this presentation. I want to explain that real quick to you right now. Okay, I got this from some other pastors and leaders and prophets, and I don't know who started it, but a couple of gentlemen like Lance Wallnau and Johnny Enlow, somewhat prominent in the charismatic side of the Christian movement, use that terminology. And what they mean by a mountain in the Bible, oftentimes a mountain would represent a stronghold or even a government. Okay. And so they use it in a similar vein that we have primary uh, mountains of influence in our society. And I'm going to list them here for you, how they have listed them. Okay. And it goes like this: family, religion or church, government, media, entertainment, business economics, and education. Okay, they list those 7 as the primary influencers. Where they go, our society tends to go. And we're greatly influenced by each one of those mountains of influence, okay? And so I like that concept. I think it's legitimate. I don't know where like the medical mountain fits in there because it's a really important one, health and medicine, Western medicine. But either way, it can fit somewhere. Those are the 7 mountains. So as I go through this message, I want you to know that's what that means. And I think it's actually a very pertinent topic for the Christian community that we've ceded the leadership of the 7 mountains to non-Christians, and we're reaping the fruits of it now. And there's various sundry reasons for that, I believe. But just to show you how important those mountains of influence are, I think that's what has transpired in my lifetime. Is the Christians have ceded those, maybe because we felt it wasn't appropriate or we emphasized other things we thought were more important. And I think then we reap the fruit. We weren't salt and light in those mountains of influence. And now we're reaping some repercussions from that. Okay. So that's the 7 mountains. And I want to also lead out today before we get to our first boomer whiteboard presentation, right? I'm a little old school, okay? Forgive me, but I enjoy it, and I got my notes, and here we go. I have 2 assumptions about my audience today. And if you're listening to me for maybe the very first time, or maybe you've heard me before, but I'm making two assumptions about my audience, and it's this. Does the United States of America need rescuing and saving? Now, this is an important question. Do you really think that? Some Christians are inclined to say, well, that's not our business, if you will. That's not our focus. It should be on the church things and the gospel. I understand the point. I disagree with that. But nonetheless, there are people who, they're not involved. I think many Americans, because they don't know what to do and they feel kind of helpless and powerless to do anything significant. That's why I'm sharing this message, because I think that's where evil persons want us to be, is hopeless and feeling powerless and divided, so forth. Okay. So does the USA need rescuing or saving? And I say yes 1,000 times. Okay. Yes, 1,000 times. We are on the precipice of destruction, I believe. Okay. Second assumption I make about my audience that I think this message would appeal to this type of person is it a worthy cause to try to save the republic? And again, now I say a bigger yes times 10,000, that I believe the founding of the United States of America through the Pilgrims and Puritans coming, and then the Declaration of Independence in 1776, kind of our birth certificate, that was a gift to the world. Okay. God meant for the United States to influence the world. I believe we were and are a covenant nation. Not everybody agrees with that. It's okay. But I do. And I think we have a destiny for leadership, not only financially, but through our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our Declaration, our freedoms, our free speech, our right to assemble, so on and so forth. Many of those rights are being violated currently. But nonetheless, the foundation was intended to be that. I believe God wanted to bless the world through the leadership destiny of the United States. So, okay, here we go. Now, here's 3 questions I'm going to answer during the course of this seminar. Number 1 is, what happened to our republic? Why do I think we need saving? Is because we got off base, okay? We got lost along the way. And so I believe that strongly, that our form of government, or what some call it a law form, how do we function? What is our form of governance? Is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic under God. That's our law form. A constitutional, which, we're a lawful, it's based on law and the laws of the Constitution. A republic meant self-governing. We, the people, are the government. Yes, we elect representatives, but we're supposed to be the controllers of them. We're supposed to be the voice into them. We're supposed to elect representatives that represent us and our core values. And that has changed radically in my lifetime and even before. So what happened to our republic is we lost that law form. Okay, and I'm talking about recovering it. Okay, I'm going to answer the question, how did that happen? How did that really transpire? Is there proof that that happened? And I want to show you that. Then thirdly, how can our republic be restored? And how can the same path that we got on be averted? In other words, a Christian term is backsliding. You become a Christian and you turn away, right? You go back. You just live the way you used to live. Well, even if we are rescued, even if we are returned to a constitutional republic under God, what's going to keep us on track down the road? What's going to prevent us from backsliding, if you will, back to what I'm going to call a corporate democracy? Okay, so I'm going to answer those 3 questions as I go through the seminar. I'll repeat them at the end and ask you if I answered them, okay? Now, I do want to highlight that one of my sources is the book, A 5,000-Year Leap. Came upon that a few years ago. Outstanding. One of the outstanding things in that book is that he has a chapter on unalienable rights, which I'm going to refer to our Declaration and our unalienable rights, is that in the Constitution, it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what precedes that is among these. So see, the founders knew that there were more. And this book actually has a chapter, and it identifies 25 other possible unalienable rights, and even says, we don't even think this is the end of it. So I'm saying as I start this seminar that I think we have like 28 unalienable rights, and many of them are being violated, and that's part of how we've lost our republic. Okay, so thank you all for listening. I hope if you're interested in those questions getting answered and those assumptions fit you, stay with me because I think it'll be radically different from anything you've ever heard. And I think it'll be very relevant, very pertinent, very constitutional even. Okay. So now I'm going to go to the whiteboard, and I'm going to start today with George Washington's farewell address to the nation. He did this in 1796, okay? And he didn't do it to Congress. He actually wrote a letter to we the people, okay? So very interesting. He wanted the people to understand because he knew the government is supposed to be representing the people. The consent of the governed are the real governors of the republic. Now, he said something in his farewell address, and I don't have it written there on the board, but I'm going to read it to you here. Hopefully, I'm going to provide you my notes when I get done through a link. But George Washington said this, quote, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of the government, destroying afterward the very engines which have lifted them up to unjust dominion. The spirit of encroachment tends to consolidate the powers of all departments into one, and thus to create, whatever the form of government, a real despotism. Now, this quote is so important that I'm going to walk through it line by line with you, and that's what you're going to see on the whiteboard here, so you can follow with me as I break this down, because super important. George Washington, John Adams, Jefferson, all these original founding fathers and presidents, they understood the dangers to our republic, and they warned us clearly. Okay, so here's what Washington said. Cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp for themselves the reins of government. I am proposing to you today that is exactly what's happened to the United States of America over my lifetime and definitely before my lifetime. But these cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men, I have come to learn, I believe there are international elites, wealthy people who have tremendous control over the 7 mountains that I mentioned earlier, just for real: family, religion, government, media, entertainment, business, and education. That I believe elite power brokers, wealthy people, have tremendous influence over those 7 mountains. And also in the background is another set of elite people. It's secret society, folks like Freemasons or Jesuits, etc. There's a lot of literature on this. You can do your own research. I can't cover all this in detail. And so the elites and the secret societies and the puppets that they blackmail and bribe have taken control of the 7 mountains. Exactly what George Washington said could happen, and he defined them: cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men. Okay, they don't fear God. They don't operate by principle or wisdom because their goal is for themselves, for their prestige, for their power, for their control of the populations of the earth. Okay, he says they will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp for themselves. Usurp means to take position unlawfully. And I believe that's happened. We're going to talk about that more, but I believe that's happened where there has been a usurpation, as it says in our Declaration of Independence. It says that usurpations of the rights that come from government, our unalienable rights, were taken by the crown. And because of that, they were declaring independence because their unalienable rights from God were violated or stolen. Okay? And Washington is warning about that here. He says, very interesting, the very things that allow elite deep state entities to exercise freedoms and make a bunch of money, albeit they're not making it honestly, generally speaking, but they could, those very engines that allowed them to succeed, now they're destroying by taking over the world, the new world order. the World Health Organization, the UN, etc. Okay, do your research, and you will discover that these organizations, their goal is not really for the health of the world. It's not really for the political stability. It's not really for peace. It's for their control of the world population. Okay, a lot of evidence for that. So he says the spirit of encroachment. This is how they do it. It doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen a week, a month, a year. It doesn't even happen in decades generally on the political level. For most of history, these kinds of things happen over long periods of time. And so the spirit of encroachment is what? A little here, a little there. That's what's happened in America. A little here, a little there, and all of a sudden, we don't even know the difference between men and women. We even are promoting that the government promote the children having surgeries to try to change their gender. Okay, we have cray-cray things going on in our midst, very immoral things, very unwise things, very unhealthy things, okay? And it's evidence that our 7 mountains are not working for us. They're working actually against us. They say they're working for us, but I think the fruit is that they are not working. And it's a spirit of encroachment. Now, very interesting. This is what he also says. The spirit of encroachment tends to consolidate the powers of all departments into one. Well, see, that's what all socialism, communism, oligarchies, the leadership of the few, the monarchy, the king, the dictatorships, they consolidate the leadership of the 7 mountains into one, so they're all saying the same thing, speaking the same thing, trying to accomplish the same things, right? And it reminds me of in Genesis how God says about before he mixed their languages up, he said, if they're one, they can do anything. And this is a principle, right, of the Bible. It's a principle of wisdom. If you're one as Christians, you can do anything. If you're one as evil persons, you can do anything. And that has transpired. So, but that's what these cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men and women do, is they have consolidated the 7 mountains into one. So you have government entities saying climate change, COVID, you're going to die, and so on and so forth. Okay. But then you have the media saying the same thing and throwing in a lot of fear. And then you have the education thing saying the same thing. So you see this, that this is what's been going on in my whole lifetime, is they've consolidated all the departments, or what we call the mountains of influence. Okay, and Washington says when that happens, it creates a real despotism. Despotism is the exercise of absolute power. And I believe that is unfolded largely in my lifetime, even though it started before then. But largely the practical reality. My wife and I, we talk about these things a lot. And we've discerned in our own experience that over the last 15 years, maybe, things have really escalated. They've gone from, going up in a way, in a bad way, to, algebraically, if you will, really skyrocketing to where we don't know the difference between genders and so forth. Okay. So it creates, though, a real despotism, Washington said. And oftentimes, despotism means it's oppressive and it's cruel. Okay, folks, that's been happening in our lifetime, especially in the last number of years, last couple of decades. Okay, now, as I read this quote, was getting ready to teach this, I noticed that Washington said, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled. Well, wait, because in my quote, I just started with cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men. What will enable these men? Okay, context is king, right? Whenever you read the Bible, you read a book, what's the author's intended meaning? You should know context in order to really interpret things properly. And I said to myself, wait, what? Washington said somebody or something was going to enable these cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men to be enabled to subvert the people's power and take the reins of government. I looked it up, you guys. I did some research. You know what it is? You'll be surprised. It was the 2-party system, the Republican Democratic system. Now, here's what he said. He said the problem with them is they become highly partisan to where the leaders of the parties are looking out more for party loyalty and party goals and party power rather than the good of the country. Folks, we're there. We have been in it, I believe, for a long time now, where partisan politics, where the parties are really looking out for themselves and getting into power or maintaining their power and having influence over the population. And I believe we are there. What Washington said is transpiring in my lifetime. I will tell you, for full disclosure, in my life, I was a Republican up until 2022. All my life, I voted Republican for these reasons. I wanted smaller government, lower taxes, less controls, regulations, etc. in our lives. And I was pro-life. That's another big one. I wanted life to be defined as beginning at conception. And the Republicans were the nearest thing to all those core values I had. So I was a Republican. But then I realized in my awakening, starting in about 2015, that the goals that the party platform stood on all these decades, very little of it had been achieved. And I had to eventually wonder, when Jesus says you'll know a tree by its fruit, I had to say to myself, hey, what's the fruit of this tree? And then I also got exposed to the human trafficking world. And I realized that lots of Republican leaders, I believe, are enmeshed in that. And that's one of the ways these cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men capture leaders and congressmen and senators, and they catch them in certain compromised situations. And then they're open to blackmail and bribery. And I believe that's happened on a really large scale. And it's going to be exposed to the American people. Okay. So that's interesting. When Washington gave this warning, the context of it is the two-party system. So now we're going to keep moving on here. And I just want you to see that when I'm referring to the current government we have, that oftentimes most people refer to it as a democracy. I'm going to call it a corporate democracy, and you're going to see why in a minute. But I want you to see that when we talk about the corporate democracy, I'm talking about our three branch, executive, legislative, judicial, and our two parties. Because I think when most people think about our government, our whole system, how it works, the parties, candidates who really want to win have to be a Democrat or Republican. They run the committees in the state and national legislatures and so on and so forth. They wield tremendous power and they have tremendous resources, money. Okay, so I want you to see that. And I think it's turned into what George Washington stated. Now, throw in there a bunch of corruption throughout the system, and you've got real serious problems. So let me turn this over here. Okay. Okay, now we're going to get into more detail on how this transpired. How did Washington's warning unfold? How did it manifest? Okay. And I want you to see it's in your notes if you get a download of the notes, but if you do a macro view of history, let me just give you a quick one, just like 6 or 7 words. Creation, that was important. God created the heavens and the earth, and he created man in his image. Christ, of course, the Redeemer, the Savior, the ultimate source of truth and life and resurrection power. That was Christ. Then we have the Reformation, Martin Luther King in 1525, I think it was. That was world changing. Okay. And then we have the Declaration of Independence, because after Martin Luther and Calvin and some others, then we had the Pilgrims and Puritans and other adventurers moving to the new America, if you will. And so then we had the Declaration, 1776, and I believe that was on the level of the Reformation. Really, it was a political Reformation, whereas Martin Luther King's was in some ways primarily spiritual, but that spilled over into all the 7 mountains of influence. Okay, now my next word is corporations, and I'm going to show you on this timeline here. I'm going to show you what I mean by that, but the word corporation is significant. And then I have the word awakening, a third great awakening, because there was a great awakening in the 1700s, a great awakening in the 1800s. I believe we're shortly coming up to a third great awakening, okay, which God has used mightily in the history of the world. And of course, history means his story. And lastly, new era. I believe we're coming up to a new era. So, okay, what we're going to see in this timeline here, I'm going to walk you through it, how it unfolded that we became a corporate democracy instead of a republic. Okay, I'm going to show you that. So, and the fact that we have a parallel situation going on. So I'm going to show you that. And the two primary words up here are de jure versus de facto governance. These are two different law forms. What form of governance do we have? Our law form is a constitutional republic under God. That's what I believe our law form is. Okay, and I'm going to show you how we lost it. Okay, and but a de jure law form means rightful or legitimate or legal. Okay, that's what that means: rightful, legitimate, or legal. Okay, the de facto means um, what's done in fact, what's practiced by. Oftentimes, it's connected with usurpation, which we talked about. It's taking possession or position without the right to do so, and I believe that's what happened. Is God gave us a de jure gift of republicanism under God, and it flowed, and eventually the de facto government became the three branches, and the two parties became the de facto practical government. And today, in my opinion, as I view America right now and everybody around me, that's how we think of our government. We may say things like the consent of the governed, or we're a republic. Some of us weirdos out there say things like that still. But it's not the reality. The reality is we view ourselves as a democracy, and the three branch, two party is actually the governing system. Okay, so let's go through the timeline rather quickly. So in the 1620s, I think Jamestown was 1609, but eventually quite a few Christians and pilgrims and Puritans came across, and the 1620 group was made up of pilgrims and other adventurers, about half and half of the 102 that came. And what's interesting about it is before they got on shore, their pastor back in Holland, they fled England to go to Holland because the monarchy was what? Becoming tyrannous, a despotic situation. And they went there, and then they realized, oh man, now our kids are melding into the Holland way of living. And so the pastor had a vision for America. He even helped them kind of decide on how you can govern yourself in a biblical wise way. And that's what happened. So offshore, they came up with the Mayflower Compact. Most everybody's familiar with the word, but basically it was a mission statement or a purpose statement of why they were coming. Okay, talk about glorifying God and spreading the word of the gospel. It was also a governing model because they knew when they got on shore, if they didn't have a plan for self-governing, they were going to be in trouble because the monarchy is back in England, right? They don't have any idea what's happening here. Okay. But I also believe it was more than that. They actually made a covenant, I believe, before God. And I believe our signers of the Declaration reaffirmed that similar type covenant. That's why I think we're a covenant nation. So that happened in 1620. So the de jure governing was really we the people. There was no three branches. There were no two parties, right? This was grassroots all the way, self-government going on here in the 1600s. And in fact, in 1692, it says the New York militia, because self-governing people usually have a militia. In other words, people with arms that will defend the safety and the rights of the local people. Well, a militia in New York started a county of safety. We're going to talk about the specifics of that. But it was a local group of citizens who managed the governing of the local entities, okay? And the militia knew it wasn't proper for the militia to be in the governing position. And so they started a committee of safety. We'll talk about, but that was really important in 1692. Most Americans know absolutely nothing about that. Okay, now we get up here 150 years after the pilgrims came. We get up to 1776. Some of us know some significant things about that. They declared independence. In other words, this de jure grassroots governing that was going on, they elected local representatives who went and they met together to iron out and decide to declare independence from the crown. Okay, we understand that from history. That's what happened. And so Um, but they were the de jure government. There wasn't even a de facto government at that point. It was all local stuff, okay? But when we got to 1776 and then eventually the Continental Congress, well, then we had a constitution and we had the three branches and we had the two parties out of the gate. I want you to see by this solid line, this is de jure. But then after the declaration, this dotted line is a de facto. But the de facto governing was submissive to the de jure governing of the local citizens. Does that make sense? But that didn't last long. In 1871, because in here we went through the Civil War and Lincoln was assassinated. I didn't know this, you guys, but the three presidents of Lincoln all were poisoned, according to my research. Two of them died. The one just before Lincoln got ill from food poisoning, but he survived. The reason I'm telling you that is the cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men were at work in a real serious way at that time. Before even Lincoln came along, before he got assassinated, here we are now after the 1865 assassination of Lincoln, 175 years or whatever, 200 years later, and we got Kennedy being assassinated, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and now in our day, Donald Trump, two attempts, and now Charlie Kirk, devoted Christian and truth teller. Folks, the cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men have been operating since before 1776. Here's another piece of information I didn't know. Back in, let's see. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We're up here now to 1865 to 1871 in the Civil War. In the 1840s, I believe it was, there was a political party called the Party Against Freemasons. What was that all about? I mean, most of us are familiar with Freemasons. Maybe they ride around on motorcycles during holiday parades or whatever. Okay, but they have a long history, like the Jesuits, way deeper than we know about. Okay, most people know about. But there was a party called that. It only lasted about 10 years, but it shows that there was enough angst amongst the leadership of we the people that somebody started a party called that. Okay, just information for you. So 1871, what happened was Lincoln was assassinated. Why did that happen? Okay, almost all of these assassinations are not lone gunmen. Okay, it's a radicalized individual. Almost some of them are probably Jason Bourne type people. Secular movies oftentimes are projections or prophetic about what they intend to do or what they currently are doing. There's a program out there called the MK Ultra. It's a CIA program, and it does Jason Bourne type things to men and women who become agents of their cause. Okay, I believe that was going on way back here. Okay, and so what happened in 1871? Lincoln's dead. Okay, the country was, kind of in turmoil still after the Civil War. And even though Lincoln went into a state of emergency because so many states seceded at that time, okay, they didn't have a quorum, but when he died, he wasn't able to return our governing system back to the original law form. And what happened was in 1871, they passed the Washington, D.C. Organic Act of 1871, which instituted this corporation called Washington, D.C. So our capital in that 10-mile area became a corporation. Okay, now this is the beginning. I mentioned that word corporation as far as historical word. Well, here's where it began, where the de facto government was supposed to be subservient to the de jure, we the people governing. What happened was because DC was established, and then you also have the City of London within London became like an independent Washington, D.C., and then the Vatican in Rome became similar. So those three, which it's known around the world that Rome was the religious mountain, London was the financial mountain, and the United States was both financial, but early on it was especially the military mountain, okay? And led by cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men. So you see that the the seeds of these things that Washington warned us about was going on way back in 1871. So this began, okay. Now we the people, consent of the governed, de jure government, it moved over here to the subservient position, okay, that's the dashed lines, to the three branch, two-party system. Does that make sense? And it became the dominant governing system. People started thinking about it, looking to it, and the voice of the people, the consent of the governed, and our inalienable rights became less and less and less, to where today, in our era, most people, the Declaration only has faint meaning, and I'm going to show you how that's true. Only has faint meaning, some special words. We even do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag for the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. The United States flag stands for a republic, not a democracy, and definitely not a corporate democracy. And yet, our federal government is a democracy. Every state government is a democracy, and all the departments are corporations. I mean, they're all corporations. You can go look it up at a national website. They're all incorporated, which also means at this time, the crown in England and the Pope and the Catholics and the crown in England and then Washington, D.C., those incorporated entities began to take a stronger control of world events in the seven mountains of influence. Okay, that's in 1871. And that's how the idea that we became a corporate democracy really began to blossom. And then we get to 1901, though. I just want to tell you that there was a Supreme Court justice in a ruling. I don't remember the name of it, but he said basically, the reality is we have two parallel governments running side by side, the de jure government of we the people and the de facto government of a corporate nature. Okay, folks, he said it in 1901. Okay, now we get some evidence and some real more manifestation of the shenanigans of the corporate democracy. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was begun. And if you know anything about this, you've done any research, it's neither federal nor do they have any reserves. They can print money out of thin air. That's not an exaggeration. Then they lend it to the United States to lend out to its citizens for your home mortgage and all these things. And we pay interest for those mortgages we take, but our government pays interest on that money that that group can print. Now tell me that makes sense. You just put all the control of your currency. There's quotes from some of the founding fathers that you want to lose your country, then lose control of your currency, lose control of your money system. That happened clearly in 1913 up until now. Okay, but that's really important. That was another manifestation of the legislatures then were not responsive anymore to the voice of the people. In fact, the committees of safety that were operating down here, began to not exist at all. Okay, that's what happened. Okay, 1913. Now we get up here to 2010. And what happened is that there were folks that saw issues with our republic. And, they kind of pieced some things together, that I'm piecing together for you, that others have taught me. And what happened was those people that were kind of forming groups and trying to preach this political gospel, if you will, good news, that we need to get back to the Republic principles, they were approached by intelligence levels in the de facto government who said, or the military intelligence, I think that's what it was, that, hey, we need to re-inhabit the Republic. The Republic is not gone. It's just been set aside and ignored. And even though we're being lied to that we're a republic, but we're not even lied to anymore. They just say it's a democracy, okay, which never was true. Okay, so they were approached and said, if you can get delegates from every state, kind of like they did early on down here, okay, as they headed toward the Declaration of Independence, if you can get some people to volunteer for positions, then you can have a national convention. And that's what they did in 2010, okay? And they called it the Republic for the United States of America. Okay, not the Republic of the United States, because the United States of America now is a corporation. Okay, I think it's radically changing quickly now. So in 2010, they did that. Now, things transpired with this organization, with this effort. The president got arrested uh, by the Obama administration, basically, and put in jail, given an 18-year sentence. They eventually got him on some tax thing. That's how the government does things when they want to get somebody who can follow the tax system perfectly, right? And they got him on that. His name was James Turner. He was the first president of the interim volunteers on a state and national level. So they recruited volunteers who saw themselves as interim office holders, especially if there was a transition away from the corporate democracy back to the de jure legitimate consent of the governed, we the people, that transitions here. So that's what this is about, is us being in a subservient position, the despotism, the usurpations of these cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men. They took over, and we're hoping for a switcheroonie. We're still going to have a three branch government, and we're probably going to have at least two parties. I think, I mean, we might have more, because I think people are going to find out the shenanigans that have gone on over my lifetime. We won't be surprised at all if we have really significant parties rise up. Okay, Elon Musk talked about an American party, but I doubt if he'll lead a political party. Okay, so you see, that's what's been going on since 2010, but the president got thrown in jail, and it really decimated the ranks. It's still going, but it's been a struggle. Okay, I joined about 2 years ago because I saw that this was a strategy for a pathway, a constitutional pathway back to our republic. So I'm hoping for a reversal where the three branch two party becomes truly subservient to we the people, and the de facto government actually secures our unalienable rights, which they've been massively violated in the last decades of my lifetime. Okay, so there you go. I hope you learned a lot. That's a huge issue right there. Okay, now we're going to move on. Let me get this set up a little bit. Okay, here we go. Moving along. I didn't even look at my clock of when I started, so it's going to be whatever it's going to be. Okay, so now the result of that dynamic, those two going together, but the people were subservient, and now it's almost dissipated, the voice of the people. So what happened is there was corruption present, cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men were there way before even the Declaration. Okay, corruption, corporation or incorporation, and complacency of we the people. We let it happen. We don't have anybody to blame. Yeah, there's bad actors. There are the cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men. They took advantage, but we don't have an excuse. And I believe we have a way out. We have a pathway out that the founders gave us, but most Americans are completely ignoring it. Okay, so here we go. And by the way, let me ask you, how do you and how do you think our fellow Americans think they can influence or change our government? If you sense that there's problems, to whatever degree, I think we're at real despotism, like Washington warned. We're in tyranny. Okay, all the departments are one. Okay, now I realize Trump is going in there like a bull in a china closet, and I think he's doing God's work, frankly. Okay, but up until Trump, it was game over. We were on the precipice of being overcome completely. Okay, so in that environment, how did people influence their government? When I do a live seminar, I play the let's play Family Feud game, right? And assuming the audience has been surveyed, and I'm the audience. I came up with about 6 things that people think we can do to influence our government, and I'll list them for you because I don't have a live audience here. Okay, number 1, most people say, well, the elections, we're a representative republic. We're supposed to elect representatives. Okay, that's true, but what if the elections aren't fair anymore? What if they're fraudulent? What if the parties are partisan to a degree that they only let candidates go through who are loyal to the party, and the core value of the party becomes the party is first, even though both parties will say the country is first. They can't say anything else but that. But what's the fruit? Come on, judge the fruit. In my opinion, President Trump is the Republican Party. If he were to get assassinated today, and I pray to God he does not, I pray for him regularly to be saved and protected, I have no confidence in the Republican Party. That's why I changed to independent in 2022. It's because I knew if I ran for office, I was going to be critical of my own party in a large way because I don't trust the current leadership of the Republican Party. They have not accomplished things. Even though we've had Republican presidents, now I look back and I realize some of those Republican presidents were very compromised people. Okay? And so elections, that's a crapshoot. How many of us? Some people don't even vote because they don't have confidence that it makes a difference. They don't have confidence that it even is being counted right, and those are legitimate concerns. Okay, how about lobbying? Well, call your senator. There's a bill before Congress. Or James Dobson. Remember, those of you who are Christians, James Dobson was big. I've got to call in about this. Put the pressure on him so we won't elect him. Really? Is that working? At all, only within the parameters of the two-party system, and as I mentioned, very partisan. Okay, I don't think that's a significant influence on government. There's a huge amount of money going to and towards our de facto three-branch two-party system. Gazillions of dollars of money. Your calls, your lobbying. Nope, I don't think it's making hardly any difference. How about if we change laws? That could be another one. Maybe good things like term limits, instituting term limits, or a constitutional convention. Those would be good things, okay, or could be. But if you've got corruption throughout your system, none of these things actually are going to work. You see, folks, there is no law form that will work in the whole planet. Not even a constitutional republic under God will work if the people that run it are corrupt. Do you understand that? That's a really important statement I just made. It won't work. It's all about leadership. And that's why Jethro, Moses's father-in-law, told him, look, you're trying to lead 3 million people by yourself, Moses. Look, you got to select people who are capable, trustworthy, they fear God, and they won't take bribes. How practical is that? And I believe America, since that parallel thing happened and we went from de jure to de facto, or from and we became subservient to the de facto government. It's because these things don't work anymore because the system is very corrupt. Okay. Well, how about going through party apparatus? Call your Republican senator, call your Democratic senator, et cetera, et cetera. I don't believe it really has hardly any impact. You maybe have a story that it did, but I would tell you that overall, I think it has. For average Americans, we don't think that it's accomplishing hardly anything. Okay, now here got a good one for the Christian community. How about we pray for a revival? Just forget all this political stuff. It's messy, it's dirty, it's this, it's that. And let's just pray for a revival. Well, that happened in America. The first and the second Great Awakenings both led up to the Declaration of Independence and the Civil War, which ended slavery. But it didn't solve everything. One of the reasons it didn't solve everything, you guys, is that the Christians may have come into faith in Christ and into the kingdom in that manner, and that's good. Glory, hallelujah. Praise the Lord. But then they weren't trained to influence the seven mountains. Most Christians in my lifetime, it's kind of like, no, stay away, stay apart. And so I was an anomaly on some levels by running for school board. Me and a couple other pastors in my church ran for school board and had a really good influence, I think, without throwing Bibles at them and preaching at them, just being common sense people of character, just like Jethro told Moses. And we got to go back there, right? But even that is not the answer I'm talking about today, even though that would be a good thing to do. Okay, so there we go. We played. How do Americans influence or change their government? They don't. Sorry, they don't. It's not been changing. For those of you who are Republicans, because it's a conservative party, and you're a Christian, you're conservative or whatever, and you think, well, what? Trump's the only thing that's really made a huge difference. It's his Supreme Court that stopped abortion, which was a total unconstitutional ruling of our Supreme Court. And Trump got some people on there, and somehow by the grace of God, it got overturned. But now it's back to the states, and New Mexico, where I live, one of the worst states in the nations. We're killing babies in the womb. Okay. And you are not, if you believe in a creator God who has personhood, who thinks and cares, and who judges right from wrong, who blesses and curses. And if you really want to seek his favor, Psalm chapter 2 says, rulers of the world should kiss the sun or bow down to the sun so that it'll go well with them in their country. Psalm chapter 2, go read it. Okay, if you think Christians aren't to be involved in anything political, no, Christians are to be involved in everything, everywhere, because Jesus is Lord over everything. And he wants to be glorified in everything by people doing good and being good and leading as servants should. Okay, so how do Americans think they can influence government? Most don't. They just throw money at it during the campaign. Try to go out and vote. Well, hopefully, maybe it'll matter. Okay, what light? Now, let me ask you this. This is something that I think most of us have not done hardly at all. I understand why, because I did it myself. So I'm not just jumping down your throat. I'm actually telling you, I have walked where you walk. What light does the Declaration of Independence shed on changing a government? Really? I mean, how come we're not asking that question? How come every church, how come every citizen is not being informed about what does the Declaration say if you get in a situation where your unalienable rights, not just the 3, the 28, are being violated? What do we do? Now, largely because of the mainstream media complicity, the fake news media is brainwashing the country and the Christians. And because of that, we don't even know our ship is almost sinking as a republic, or it has sunk and we got to revive it now. We don't even know. We conservatives still talk about a republic when the reality is it's not dynamic as a republic at all. Okay, I'm going to read you something from my little constitutional book here. I got it all marked up, right? Okay, I want to read something to you, and it says this. I'm not going to read it all, but that to secure these unalienable rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government, notice, here comes, he's going to identify the problem, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends of securing your unalienable rights, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. Okay, you're seeing here, what say our declaration? And it's written in an if-then way. If these conditions exist, then here's your response. Our founding fathers told us what we could do because, folks, it's what they did. They started out as a self-governing unit of people. Many of them church, not all of them, many of them church people, learning how to govern like Jethro told Moses, selecting these kinds of people like the Mayflower Compact did, okay? But it changed over time, as we've seen. But what does it say? If they're destructive to the ends of securing our rights, you have the right to alter or abolish it. Now, don't you think we should take seriously what our Declaration says and our founding fathers fought like crazy over weeks and months to write this stuff down? Do you not think every word wasn't thought through? These were learned men, far more learned than I believe most Americans, including myself, are today. Knew multiple languages, knew Greek, knew Hebrew, etc., knew their Bibles, and knew history. They knew that the great American experiment about self-government was a 5,000-year leap in human history. They knew it. Okay, that's why they're warning us. Okay, so it goes on to say, prudence indeed will dictate the governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. They knew human nature was that if people have a government running for extended period like ours, 250 years, it shouldn't be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. They knew that human nature was, they're not going to alter or abolish. They can, they should, they have the right, but they're not going to do it because they're more inclined to suffer, because changing, altering, or abolishing your governing system means what? It means war. It means war. Literally, through human history, it means war. How many peaceful turnovers do you know about in history? They don't happen easily, quickly, smoothly. Oftentimes it's guns and bullets. Nobody wants guns and bullets. And where I'm going to with this today, if we follow the Declaration, we don't have to use guns and bullets. Okay? Follow with me now. So they'd rather suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms. Again, it says that. What was our law form? A constitutional republic under God. And it's gone. Okay, it's just gonzo. You say, well, this doesn't, in God we trust on our money. Listen to yourself, people. You got to start thinking outside of mainstream media or the educational system, which doesn't teach these things. Okay, there's motivations not to teach these things because this brings freedom, and the founders knew it. So it goes on in this. For time, I won't read anymore. Long train of abuses and usurpations, which is what happened to the colonists. Okay, abuses and usurpations, taking positions unlawfully, oftentimes oppressive and cruel. It says on the next page, I won't read it, you have the right and the duty now. So you have the right to alter or abolish. Now you have the right and the duty to throw off such a government, such a form, such a system. Okay, let me keep going. Then the last one. In this declaration, it says absolute despotism or tyranny. It says both of them in this paragraph, within the first few paragraphs of the declaration. And it says their response, it's an if then, if you see absolute despotism or tyranny, and I do, and a growing percentage of Americans see what's going on, that in every mountain they are not securing our rights, unalienable rights. They're stealing them. They're hiding them. They're making excuses for them. They're re-educating us in every mountain. Our currency's jacked. Our medical system is jacked. Our educational system is being used by the deep staters against us and our unalienable rights, and on and on and on. The churches have been impacted. The family has radically been impacted by these things, radically impacted by these things. We're like the frog in the boiling water. It's happening so slowly. The spirit of encroachment that Washington talked about. A little here, a little there, year after year, decade after decade, law after law, Supreme Court ruling after Supreme Court ruling, and voila, here we are. Absolute despotism and tyranny. And it said about them that it constrained them to alter the system and declare independence from the crown. So now, knowing that human nature is such that we will suffer evils rather than change our form, because normally if you change the form, it's going to lead to what? In most countries of the world, it's going to lead to civil war, some kind of military coup, those kind of things. I want to tell you, we are not proposing that at all. We are proposing that there's a latent de jure government that's been silent for a long, long time, more than my lifetime, way back to the 1871s and even before then. That de jure government has been there in dormancy. And the de facto government, the three-branch, two-party that we all think of as government, it's been ruling our seven mountains, not in a good way. Cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men have their claws in everything and control. That's why it's an absolute despotism. Okay, strong words, but this is strong words. But do we take it seriously? I don't think we do. So if I sound like I'm scolding you, I'm scolding myself. I didn't take it seriously. I wasn't taught these things. I never saw that timeline. I didn't know we were a corporation. I didn't know. I heard maybe some in my readings about, protecting our liberties and if we become an immoral people and so forth, that this could happen. Okay, I was aware of some of those things, but I was like the frog in the boiling water. I didn't really see it unfold until really about 2015 for me. And I hope and pray to God that some of you are waking up. Now, So it's suffer the evils or civil war, or is there another alternative? Here we go. Okay, here we're getting down to it. Is there another alternative? And yes, there is. The look, the other alternative is complete the re-inhabitation of the de jure law form. That's another word, rather restoring the republic, the re-inhabitation. That's the word that the Republic for the United States, that's they used. And that's what they did in 2010. They planted their flag with world organizations. Okay, they went out and said, hey, we're re-establishing the dormant republic, republicanism law form in the United States of America. We're doing that. And they gave notification to leaders in our country and the governors and world leaders. Okay, that happened in 2010, as we saw. So I'm saying instead of just suffering the evils and let our inalienable rights just go by the wayside, or civil war with guns and bullets or military coup, I'm saying there's an alternative actually in our Declaration of Independence, and it's this: to just get back to the law form of grassroots, county level, we the people, consent of the governs through by establishing or standing up committees of safety. Now, committees of safety, this is like a new, we don't even have them. Okay, along that pathway, if you'll go back, after 1871, the committees of safety, uh, the voice of we the people, let's call it a grassroots, organic, serious lobbying group, more than that, because we think of lobbying the three branch, two party system. Well, they were more than a lobbying group, but I'm just trying to use it. It was a voice of the people, but it was the governing voice of the people. Okay, but then it reversed. Okay, so here we are. What are we going to do? Just suffer the evils? Just come to the precipice of destruction? Just let it happen? Do we want guns and bullets, civil war? No, nobody on the planet wants that. Nobody in America wants that. But there's an alternative: the recovering or the re-inhabiting of the de jure law form through developing committees of safety in your local counties. Look, you have the right by the First Amendment to assemble. Okay? You have the duty, according to Article 4 and Section 4 of our Constitution, it says the federal government is supposed to guarantee a Republican form of government. We have corporations everywhere. Your county's a corporation. Your state is a corporation. It's a corporate democracy. It's not really a republic. And there's corruption throughout. So you have the right, when you see this, you have the duty, according to the Declaration, to abolish or alter or throw off said form. See, okay, what are we trying? Think about it. What are we doing? Well, a lot of us right now are trusting Donald Trump. And I say there's nobody else more that you could trust as far as a human being, because I think he's called and anointed to drain the swamp, to be a bull in the china closet, to have the skills, the gifts, and the courage, the big balls to get it done. And he's doing it at great sacrifice. And people and Christians are nitpicking him about his tweets and his tariffs and stuff most people don't even know hardly anything about, and they're nitpicking him, and they can't see the forest for the trees for what he's doing for us. He's laying it out. Even yesterday, he and Pete Hegseth had the military generals and admirals come together, 800 of them. Trump had them sign a document. Go read it. It's online. And basically, you need to be submissive to the commander-in-chief of our republic. He's changing the terminology. He's making the switch. Okay, he's doing his part. Are you? Are you doing your constitutional part? And I would say we are at the place where this is the strategy, is to re-inhabit the de jure governing on the local level through committees of safety. We call them assemblies, county assemblies, but they were originally called committees of safety for a reason. They kept each other safe. And then as it progressed to the Declaration in the three-branch government, they wanted their unalienable rights to be protected. It says it, what we can do, what we should do, what we have a duty to do. Most Americans are clueless. Okay, at the beginning of this presentation, I asked 3 questions. What happened? Now you should know that we went from a de jure people, consent of the governed situation, Mayflower Compact-like leadership, to the three-branch, two-party system, and it, through nefarious means and cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men, became the dominant government in the people's minds and in the corporations, and we're trying to get it back to the grassroots. So that's how it happened. What George Washington warned us of, that transpired. How can it be restored or re-inhabited and then sustained? Okay, so I want you to think about this. How can it be re-inhabited, restored, and then sustained? So even if Trump is able to do what I think he's trying to do, which I hope you guys catch on to, and quit nitpicking about his tariffs and his tweets and this and that and the other, that most of you don't know what he knows. You don't know what's going on. And he's under tremendous pressures. He almost got assassinated at least twice, we know of. So I'm telling you that if he were to go away, like his second term ends, or whatever happens with him, what are we going to do? Well, by establishing committees of safety in our local counties that are nonpartisan, that are peaceful, we're not trying to overthrow the corporate democracy. I think the corporate democracy is gonna fold financially and otherwise, morally. And hopefully we, the people, have a grassroots voice all over the country through these committees of safety, these county assemblies. Folks, that's the vision that's been passed on to me. I'm passing it on to you. Okay? Now, let's go to the next. We're almost done. I want to do a risk rewards assessment of what I've just said. These committees of safety, you have to elect a moderator, a scribe, or a secretary, and a bailiff, and you can start meeting. It only takes 5 or 7 people to do it. Sandoval County in New Mexico is the first county in New Mexico to stand up their county, okay, as a legitimate expression of the voice of we the people. We went and we have a settlement covenant. We took it to the corporate Democratic County people and had them, certify it, if you will. Okay, we did all that. Okay, now we're meeting to try to prepare for the transition when the de jure government will be the dominant voice of our governing in our country and not the 3-branch and 2-party system that we're used to. Okay, so let's do risk rewards. I believe we're in a tyranny, despotism situation. Still, a lot of Americans are sleeping because the mountains of influence, and the media especially, is lying to you every day about the current status, the current issues, what's going on, and they're not telling you the truth. It's coming out. Trump's job is to drain the swamp. It's a God-ordained job. He's doing it. Get on board with it. It'll help. If we have success, you will have a return of your rights, your liberties, and justice in our land, which we currently don't have. And you're going to leave a legacy for your children that far out exceeds anything. Okay? I was a Christian pastor. I understand spiritual battles, and I understand, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Okay, I understand that, but yet, if Christians are not wise and engaging and practically salt and light in every mountain of influence, then those mountains will be taken over by nefarious people, like Washington said. He saw it. Cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men will take over. and they'll bring all the departments into one. That's what's happened. And largely because the church have receded or retreated from this level of engagement in the culture. And a lot of Christians think that's what we're supposed to be doing. Okay. How's that working for us? How's it working to call your representative? How's it working on election day? How's it working to lobby Congress? It's not working. And that's why there was a need for President Trump. I thank God for all the Christians who have been praying for our country for many, many decades. Intercessors who I think have paved the way for Trump to get in there. Now, he's just a point man on a basketball team. He's the point guard. Okay, he's guiding. He's making way for all of us. People don't realize it. In fact, one prophetic person back in 2011 said he's the spiritual gatekeeper. He's going to open doors for the church. He's going to lead the charge. And you're like, what? Look, there's a lot of issues with the Christian churches, with their leadership. Okay, so you judge things by their fruit. Remember, God wrote letters to 7 churches in the first century, and he scolded most of them for their lacks. Okay, we're there. Okay, so long game endeavor, establishing counties of safety throughout New Mexico, throughout the country. It's happening. Okay, New Mexico's behind. Some states don't have any. Some states have quite a few. It's not a short game. This is a political matter because it's going to take a massive re-education of the population. Some of you are listening to me right now. You say, I've never heard this before. I know. Most of you have not heard this before. It's not being taught. It's not being emphasized. You're hearing social democracy. Oh, the Republicans are a threat to democracy. What democracy? There's no democracy. There's a corporate democracy, yes. But it's not what our founders intended, guaranteed. And this is a process to read, but it's a long game. It's slow. It's swimming upstream. Now, I'm going to talk about some accelerators here in a minute, okay, which you could quicken. But it's a long game endeavor, so you better pull your boots up, your work boots up to get involved. Because the president of this group got jailed in 2012. He got let out in 2023. But the founder of this group got thrown in jail in 2012. That scared people. Okay, are you ready to pay the price? Okay. Now, the national website says that in order for counties of safety to really have its voice throughout the political system, the parties and the branches, we need a majority buy-in. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. We've got to have numbers. We've got to have voices and participation. Now, if you think that there's 7 mountains or maybe more, but if you think there's 7 mountains of influence, you think about people have different interests and passions. Well, maybe only 1/7 of them are going to have, pretty serious or interest or passion in the political realm. Because I'm talking today really just about the political realm. It's not the only realm. There's the government realm. There's like political, but there's the family. There's the church. There's business, finance. There's education. There's media. You understand? People can have influence in those other arenas. So I'm not like thinking everybody has to do what Don Slicky is doing. No, I have a passion. I'm definitely a spiritual person. I'm a professing Christian that hasn't wavered at all in my faith, stronger than ever, actually. But I'm also political because I see the value of that mountain and I have interest in that. And I was on the school board for 16 years. I've demonstrated that. I've manifested that. And I showed my character and my integrity while I was there. And this is the kind of people we have to elect all through our systems and get into leadership in all the mountains. So we need more voices. We really need people to take our declarations seriously and get in there. You have the right, you have the duty to throw it off, change the form, however painful it is. You see, because if we don't, I'm talking to fellow boomers now. I don't know what was 64 or whatever it is, 84. I'm 68. I'm talking to fellow boomers. What are we leaving behind for our children? Are we leaving a heritage like Washington and Jefferson and Adams? And they warned us about these things. And those nefarious people came in and they've done the damage. So let's recover. God is doing this, you guys. Okay, so now what are some accelerators? Because I said this is a long game, and that's true. But what could be some accelerators? Here we go. Number 1, providence, the God factor. That's the That's the big ticket one. I think it's the most important one because I think God has a plan. And so the basic big times in history, creation, Christ, Reformation, Declaration of Independence, Third Great Awakening, which I think we're entering into for a new era. Trump's been calling it the golden era, the new era. Others are using that terminology. The age of Aquarius, the golden age. I heard Trump use the term millennium. Is it possible, dear Christians, that your rapture doctrine is not helping us because it causes people to kind of sit on the sidelines because you think it's going to get worse and worse and worse until we get raptured and the Antichrist takes over in world tribulation? What if that teaching is wrong? I know you've been told it's biblical. I know famous people preach it. I preached it early on. I quit about 15 or 20 years ago because something wasn't right for me in my spirit. And now I don't think it's biblical. Okay. But whether I'm right or wrong, I don't care as much about that actually, because it's a secondary doctrine of if there's a rapture, is it mid, pre, post trib? I really don't care about that at all. Christ is coming back and he will reign. But the rapture doctrine causes people to sit on the sideline and expect it to get worse and worse, which causes more and more the cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men to take over. That's what's going on. Okay, so providence, the God factor. If God can birth a nation of destiny like America as a gift to the world, he can rebirth it. Yeah, amen? You agree? If God birthed this, see, if you think it just happened and God's like up there and he's neutral about all this stuff, he doesn't care if they take over. He doesn't care. No, that's not my God. He cares. He wants people to be blessed and do good and live well and live in peace and spread the gospel. Yes. Providence is the primary factor. And I believe God is instituting his plan because I've heard prophets talk about Donald Trump and I've stood out publicly on Facebook and said, that's what I believe about him. He's called and anointed to be the bull in China closet and to drain the swamp and make America great. That's his God assigned job. I don't know about his personal spiritual life. I think he may have had an encounter with Christ. I think maybe he might be listening to God. But, he's rough edges. He's all this and that and the other. But he's doing his calling. Are you? Are you helping? Or are you just, you're in the stands and you're not on the field playing the game? Okay. So Donald J. Trump and Charlie Kirk, or Charlie, yeah. You know what I'm talking about. I just recently came up with Donald Trump is bull in China closet, if you will, in his personality. Charlie Kirk is like a John the Baptist. He's like an Elijah in the Old Testament. And Jesus said John the Baptist had the spirit of Elijah. And I believe Charlie is like a John the Baptist. He's preaching the gospel, but he's preaching political truth. He's preaching marriage truth. He's preaching society truth. And it's spreading like crazy, thank God. And I think Charlie's legacy, talked about legacy up here, his legacy is greater in his death than it was if he would have stayed alive. That's what it appears to me. That the message, to live is Christ, to die is gain. And I believe his life is gaining, the fruit is gaining, because especially the younger generation is really listening to his messages, which are not just be saved. They are be saved, but they're also be involved. Be a good citizen, be a voter, be a good husband, be a good provider, be a good wife, raise kids, do basic biblical things, and live in a country where you have freedom to really do those things. And both people don't have to work. Let's get our financial currency back. Get rid of the Federal Reserve. Get rid of the IRS. Do you understand what I'm saying? You see how these mountains are? Clean up big pharma. Clean up the medical system so it's not all run by money. You guys know some of these things. Let's get her done. These guys have led the way for us. The military. In the word of Q, the Q posts, which I believe were military intelligence to those like Don Slicky who wanted to hear. I was hungry to hear. So I listened. I read about half the 5,000 posts. So I have some knowledge. One of the Qisms is the military is the only way. Not in terms of a coup, because I think they're going to do everything constitutionally. And Trump is doing it right now as we speak. I mean, yesterday's meeting, you guys, yesterday's meeting of these 800 generals, it wasn't just kicking out the fat guys who can't meet the qualifications or the women who can't meet the physical qualifications. There's more than that going on, be guaranteed. Okay. But I will not be surprised whatsoever if there's any kind of military intervention for the sake of our country. House cleaning and purge. Look, we cannot proceed as a country with our unalienable rights being violated so blatantly in election fraud, in the COVID political maneuverings of COVID and the vaccines. And if tyranny is not evident to you now that that's what happened and they violated our unalienable rights, your medical rights to choose what to do with your body, they fearmongered us into shutdowns and children staying home in schools and losing a whole year of education. Talk to the educators. That's what happened. They said they did it for our good. They didn't do it for our good. They did it for our control. You got to wake up. You got to wake up. And I'm proposing that, this is just one pathway. I think it's primary to help the change and then sustain the change is to recapture and reestablish the counties, the committees of safety, the county assemblies. It's constitutional. It's in the Declaration. Abolish that form and set up new ones that are going to secure your rights. That's what it says. If we don't clean the evildoers and the corrupt and the bribed of the mountains, there's no way. It's impossible, you guys. No. God took care of Pharaoh when the Israelites were in Egypt. He put pressure on Pharaoh. He put pressure on Pharaoh. He put pressure on him. Then he took the firstborn and he said, okay, I'm done. Let him go. Then they went out and plundered them, left with wealth. And then he hardened his heart, changed his mind. They came after him and God drowned them out in the Red Sea. Folks, I believe history repeats itself. Though what has been will be again. We're going to experience a Red Sea moment. I think it's coming very, very soon. And it'll result in an awakened population. Why don't you get on board earlier and not wait for it? Okay, why don't you get on board earlier with what the Constitution says? Okay, there we go. That's it. I don't know. I can't say it hardly any more impassioned or clear than that. You can go do your own research. You can go to the national website, the Republic for the United States of America. We have a website here. I'm going to try to put the notes underneath my Facebook and or YouTube. I haven't been doing YouTube because they censored us. I didn't want to start something that's going to get censored, blah, blah, blah. Another evidence of tyranny in our midst. And so you can go to the websites, the Republic for the United States of America.org. Start there, and then your local state will have probably a group. And like in Sandoval County in New Mexico, we have a group that we've started locally. Okay, view. There's way more information. Okay, I've been doing a flyover today. That's what I did. But there's a lot more detail, a lot more micro thoughts. But I tried to give you as best I could what I see. And there's some books that are called Re-Inhabited that a lady and her husband wrote, that two thick volumes. Here it is. I can show you, just to show you. You can get these on Amazon right here. The Hurtlers, right there. There you see it. Okay, outstanding. The first volume is about a true history of the United States. I learned a lot, and I thought I was fairly educated because I did a lot of reading, even after being a pastor and stuff, about our country's foundation. And then the second one is about the movement, the Republic for the United States of America, and the early president getting arrested, and all what's transpired since then. Okay, that's what the second volume is about. So, but you can visit, look it up. If you give them your name and email, they'll tell you when they're meeting as a county. If they have one, if they don't have one, they'll try to recruit you to help them set one up, like we have in Sandoval County. And pass this on. This is the beginning salvo of knowledge and information. So there's no lack of information, you guys. It's out there, but do you have enough hunger to break out or to even re-engage as a concerned citizen, a Christian activist, whatever you want to call yourself? Okay, So I thank you for listening. I don't even know how long I went. Hour and 24 minutes. Not too bad. Pretty close to 90 minutes. That's awesome. I didn't even see it on my screen. So thank you very much. You can always call me. You can message me, text me, but message me on Facebook. We can talk. I'd be willing to help you or assist you if you have some real core questions. But do your research. Start. Turn the TV off. Really, turn the TV off. Turn the mainstream media news, even the conservative channels. Tend to kind of blabber on about current topics, and I think some of the current topics are a misdirection for all of us. It's not the real issues. I'm trying to help you get down to the real issues that I think Trump is dealing with, is restoring a republic and dealing with each of the mountains. So see, he's got RFK Jr., make America healthy again, which we needed so bad. He's got financial guys dealing with the currency, the Federal Reserve, the IRS, etc., all the way down the line. Get educated and then get involved, okay, and create a legacy. So thanks. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. Amen.